If you make it to the NBA, you're now a part of rarefied air. These are some NBA players who ruined their careers. And starting off, this player got convicted of some messed up stuff. Several NBA scouts had Stevenson compared to none other than his airness, Michael Jordan. But on his draft night, Stevenson would have his first run-in with the law. A brawl broke out, and he claimed he was jumped by 5 other people. Damn. But unfortunately, on June 19th of 2001, Stevenson was arrested for statutory rape of a 14-year-old and would have the case dropped down to a misdemeanor, a light sentence given the fact that he was facing a possible 3-year prison sentence. But due to all these off-court issues, he never really had the chance to maximize all that potential. And another player that had plenty of potential, Javaris Crittenton. And in the summer of 2007, things didn't go as planned and took a dark turn. See, Crittenton only played 22 games for the Lakers. A damn shame, because he was traded to Memphis during his rookie year. It was enough time for him to join one of the most well-known gangs in Los Angeles while playing for a franchise like the Lakers. And after bouncing around for 3 seasons, Crittenton and teammate Gilbert Arenas were involved in a locker room confrontation involving guns. Where was security during all this? Former Washington Wizards teammate Caron Butler said, "You never know, and that's the crazy thing about it." When questioned if there was going to be a trigger pulled in the incident between Crittenton and Arenas. Crittenton and Arenas were suspended for the rest of the season by NBA Commissioner David Stern and went on to never play for another NBA franchise ever again. But this player did end up staying in the league a little while longer. When this man got hot, no one, and I mean no one, could cool him down. Gilbert Arenas shot 3-pointers like they were free throws. It was reported that Arenas had admitted to storing unloaded firearms in his locker at Capital One Arena. And on January 1st, 2010, it was also reported that Arenas and teammate Javaris Crittenton had unloaded guns in the Wizards' locker room during a Christmas Eve argument regarding gambling debts. The DC Metropolitan Police and the U.S. Attorney's Office began investigating. And on January 6, 2010, Arenas' 28th birthday, the NBA suspended him indefinitely without pay. Happy birthday. But this lack of maturity off the court was what got him in trouble. Arenas stored unlicensed guns in his locker room and pulled them out on his teammate, who we discussed earlier in this list. Arenas was subsequently suspended for the rest of the year. Now, if you watch this man play, looking back now, he was literally Steph Curry before Steph Curry. Damn shame. But on a more peaceful note, well, not really. Metta World Peace, formerly known as Ron Artest, played 15 years in the NBA, and by no means was that a failure. However, it's not what Metta World Peace did, but what he didn't do. Metta could have had a Hall of Fame career had his emotional intelligence levels been higher at a younger age. On November 19, 2004, then named Ron Artest, was at the center of an altercation among players and fans during a game in Auburn Hills, Michigan. The brawl involved Artest's Pacers, several other players, and spectators, including Pistons fans. A fan threw a beverage on him, and he flipped. Not his brightest moment. The NBA suspended Artest for the rest of the regular season, plus any playoff games. Artest ended up missing 86 games, the longest suspension for an on-court incident in NBA history. Now, I don't care. Ain't no fan is worth me losing an entire NBA check. And unfortunately, his participation in the Malice at the Palace brawl in 2003 and his other off-court theatrics sealed his fate from the Hall. It's a big blemish on what otherwise would have been a very good career. But this player also had himself low-key a pretty good career. Latrell Sprewell was talented and solid. Despite Sprewell's accomplishments, his career was overshadowed by an incident in 1997 in which he choked and punched then Warriors coach PJ Carlesimo during practice. Yeah, putting hands on your coach isn't the right move, and it resulted in a 68-game suspension. All coach did was ask Sprewell to make crisper passes. When Carlesimo approached, Sprewell threatened to kill him and dragged him backwards by his throat, choking him for 7 to 10 seconds before his teammates and assistant coaches pulled him off. Oh, he wasn't done. Sprewell then returned about 20 minutes later after showering and changing. He landed a rude blow at Carlesimo's right cheek before being dragged away again by the assistant coaches. And this was not Sprewell's first incident with the Warriors, because in 1995, he fought with teammate Jerome Kersey, returned to practice carrying a 2x4, and reportedly threatened to return with a gun. Oh my goodness. With Latrell Sprewell, it was on site with everybody. But you did not want to get caught in the crosshairs of this guy, Dennis Rodman. Now, how does a Hall of Fame player end up on this list? Rodman did win 5 NBA championships, was NBA Defensive Player of the Year twice, and he's led the league in rebounding 7 times. The kind of stuff we may never see again from someone 6'7" in a league that was back then full of giants. One of his more fiery outbursts came in a regular season game against the New Jersey Nets when he picked up 2 technical fouls in a game and was subsequently given his marching orders to the locker room. Left incensed by the call, Rodman took up the issue with referee Ted Bernhardt before screaming in his face and grazed the official with a headbutt. Rodman, who was 34 at the time, made a scene as he left the court. He received a 6-game suspension without pay and was fined $20,000 the very next season. The Bulls star tripped over cameraman Eugene Amos. I mean, we see this all the time, players tripping over cameramen. But Rodman? Yeah, he took it a little far. He then lashed out at the cameraman by kicking him in the groin. Ooh, which reportedly led Amos to lose consciousness before he was carried off on a stretcher. Imagine being kicked by a size 14 shoe in the groin. God! And that kick saw Rodman receive a strong punishment from the NBA as they fined him $25,000 and suspended him for 11 games without pay. Rodman also agreed to pay Amos $200,000 for the damage he inflicted, which ultimately costed him an estimated $1 million in total. I don't know about you, but I've never heard of a $1 million kick before. My God. And this next player, yeah, he didn't wait long before he received his first fine. See, Michael Beasley was highly talented, being named the Big 12 Player of the Year in his lone season at Kansas State, where he averaged 26 points and 12 rebounds, while showcasing his ridiculous offensive arsenal. But during the 2008 draft, Derrick Rose was the surefire #1 pick, but Beasley was hardly a consolation prize when the Miami Heat snagged him at #2. According to Draft Express's player profile, the 6'10 forward's weaknesses included attitude, focus, and off-court red flags. Yikes! Apparently, not one to waste time, Beasley ran afoul of NBA policy at the first official opportunity to do so. This is before he even played in his first NBA game. So he, Mario Chalmers, and Darrell Arthur violated program policy by having women in the room. Hotel workers also detected the odor of marijuana and were only there in the first place because the smoke alarm went off at approximately 2 a.m. Shake my damn head. The Minnesota Timberwolves were banking on a new environment bringing the best out of Beasley. So they traded for him in July of 2010. And despite all his natural gifts, Beasley was just never able to stay away from off-court antics and stick on an NBA roster. However, this next player took the antics a bit far after losing in the 1996 finals, appearing to just have given up. Basketball in the 1990s had plenty of stars, but what if I told you during the mid-1990s, one of the most exciting players to watch was a player by the name Shawn Kemp. Shawn Kemp didn't like the long-term contract that he signed with the Sonics, so he wanted to restructure his contract. Unfortunately, the Sonics were not willing to oblige, and after losing in the 1996 NBA Finals, there were reports of Shawn Kemp showing up to practice drunk. Also, there were reports of Kemp staying out late drinking the night before a game. Yeah. The most notable incident like this happened the night before the most anticipated matchup of the year. But the night before the game, The Rain Man, apparently, was throwing back drinks late into the night. Employees of the bar said Kemp stayed till 2 in the morning and that he consumed 9 to 10 drinks over a 3-hour, 15-minute period. Oh, I could feel it in my stomach. The season would eventually start on February 5th, 1999, and Shawn Kemp came into training camp 50 pounds overweight. On top of being incredibly out of shape, a Sports Illustrated story claimed that Kemp had fathered 7 children with 6 women. And to make things worse, the Rain Man fell into the world of drugs, and his play on the court was starting to suffer as well. This next player wasn't out here doing drugs, but he was kind of lazy. Bynum became the youngest player to ever appear in an NBA game. The young center, despite numerous injuries, developed into one of the best centers in the league. See, Bynum tried to step into Shaq's shoes, but Kobe wasn't impressed with his work ethic. And eventually, the Lakers decided to trade him to the Philadelphia 76ers. Quick shout out to Afro Bynum. But his lack of determination and respect for the game cost him a couple of suspensions. And he was eventually out of the league by the age of 26. One can only imagine if he had stayed healthy. Bynum was young when his career ended, but this next player, his career ended before it even started. Now, this is a name that many of today's NBA fans aren't familiar with, but back in 1986, Len Bias was thought to be the next Michael Jordan. And barely 2 days after being drafted number 2 overall, Bias drove back to the campus of the University of Maryland, snorted cocaine in the dormitory suite shared by Bias and his teammates. Bias reportedly had a seizure. All attempts by the emergency medical team to restart his heart and breathing were unsuccessful. Bias was pronounced dead at 8:55 a.m. Bias was a lethal weapon offensively and really had no weaknesses to his game. And sadly, the world would never know how good Bias could have been if he had put on an NBA jersey. And that's the end of the video. It goes to show that even if you make it to the NBA, you still got to put a lot of work in to stay there.